Why are so many young people buying into socialism, given what you have just said? You have the famine, you have the slaughter, you have the
Yeah,
destabilization of societies, you have the 100 million that you alluded to, and now with the gradual opening of the Chinese archives, we're finding out that 100 million is actually understating
mm,
the problem
yeah,
significantly.
right.
Why is it that today's youth are buying into this in mass? Obviously, you're an educator, and you know how this bad ideology has permeated the institutions, including Christian institutions, but
Right.
particularly educational institutions, environmental institutions, and entertainment
Yeah, it's
institutions,
everywhere.
etc. Yeah.
Right. Well, there are two things. First is just rank ignorance. A lot of young people don't know world history. They don't know the history of the 20th century. They don't know the history of philosophy, political ideology. They haven't understood Marx and Engels, and they haven't seen what Lenin did in the Soviet Union, what Mao Zedong did in China. So a lot of it is ignorance. The other part is a smokescreen where people will say, oh, we want democratic socialism. We don't want Marxist totalitarianism. We want the best of both worlds. Well, when you look at the leaders in critical race theory and Black Lives Matter and so on, they go right back to Marx and Engels. They go back to, we need revolution, and we will do what it takes to have revolution. But I'd even point to some countries in Europe that are supposedly these great models of socialism and say, well, how much economic freedom do they have? How much political freedom do they have in those countries? One thing about America, there are many unique things about America, and I defend American exceptionalism in my book, is that you have opportunities for advancement you typically don't have elsewhere, even if you are discriminated against. All right. So let me give you a personal example. A friend of mine knew a family that moved to the United States from France. And the reason they moved is that the man had reached a certain level of achievement in his profession. And because of the taxation structure and the socialist government, he couldn't do any better. He had reached a plateau. So they moved to the United States where he could use his abilities much more freely and develop more wealth and use his gifts with greater liberty. So when people say, well, we want democratic socialism, and it's just unfair that so few people have so much money, let's do some economics 101. I dedicated my book to one of my intellectual heroes, who is Thomas Sowell. And I've been reading Thomas Sowell for 40 years. He's an economist, historian, African American, former Marxist, interestingly, and he's written a great critique of Marxism. But the people that clamor for socialism don't understand how economics works. They have this airy fairy ideal of a perfect society, or a much more equitable society. And if we just mean well, and we have this, what Sowell calls the vision of the anointed, you have these people that say, well, let's tax the rich, give to the poor, make sure we don't have capital accumulating and have the government in control of this. It's unworkable. And every economic system east of Eden will have wealth differentials. And in fact, they're not intrinsically wrong. So, back to Bill Gates, and I'm no big fan of Bill Gates, but he's a very wealthy man. He's brought a lot of good into the world through his enterprise, right? Even if he was selfish, he's provided goods and services for many people. And for all I know, Bill Gates never broke the law in doing so. So has he taken anything from anybody? Has Elon Musk stolen anything from anybody? Well, maybe there could be a court case against him or something. But my point is that in a free market situation, you can make a tremendous amount of money developing industries, services, and all the rest of it. But typically, really wealthy people don't just hold on to their money and stuff it into 100 mattresses. They invest it. And when they invest it, that creates economic opportunity for other people. When you make everything controlled by the state is not alert and receptive to what's going on the ground. And Thomas Sowell has some terrific examples of this in the old Soviet Union, where there wasn't a market to allocate goods and services. It was all from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
So you had warehouses full of goods, like full of tractors. And a few hundred miles away, farmers didn't have any tractors to use. Why? There was no market mechanism to share the information and bring the goods and services where they belong. So a lot of left-wing critical race theory ideas about justice and economics are based on a fundamental ignorance of how markets work, and also a fundamental ignorance that even greed, and greed is a sin according to scripture, according to Jesus, even greed works better in a free market than it works in a socialist setting, because greed can produce good effects in a free market situation, where in a socialist situation, you have the bureaucrats that get all the power, all the money, and they have it and they enforce it on everybody else, and they can't go broke. They can't fail to compete in the market because they're not in a market. They're just bureaucrats with power from the top down. So one of the burdens of my book is to argue for the free market from a Christian viewpoint, from a historical, from an economic viewpoint.
Ideas have consequences, bad ideas have victims, and few ideas in recent history are worse than wokeism, a social and mental disease that is wreaking havoc on sanity and common sense. That's why the upcoming special edition of the Christian Research Journal tackles this dangerous ideology head-on. To receive your copy, visit equip.org, that's equip.org, or call 888-7000-CRI, that's 888-7000-CRI.